Has anyone ever felt just like a little bit lonely and had the urge to just see a really big whale? That's exactly what happened to me last summer, the first I spent far from home, which I spent serving at a women's shelter in Southern California. At the end of each day, I would sit on my bed, stare at the wall, and feel the same inescapable feeling creep in: loneliness. And I didn't like it one bit. As days turned to weeks, it wasn't only my family and friends that felt incredibly far away. I began to wonder if perhaps God's loving gaze stopped looking at me once I crossed over the border of California. After all, I certainly didn't feel like one who is looked upon lovingly by the Lord, but more than anything, I wanted to feel seen. A few weeks into my time in California, I decided that if I couldn't feel like I was seen, then at least I could try on my own to see something really, really great. And even better if it could be big and dramatic and impossible to miss. And late one night, it hit me. A whale. I would go and see a whale, all by myself. And I was resolved that it would be meaningful. I felt triumphant as I purchased and printed a whale-watching cruise ticket and set my alarm with the conviction of one who knows she has big plans for the next day. On my way to Newport Beach the next morning, I found myself in conversation with God. You know, God, not to give you any hints or anything, but you know how I've been feeling a little distant from you lately? And, you know how I'm driving all this way to do this whale cruise? Wouldn't this be like a super convenient way to show me that you're paying attention to me? This train of thought continued as I boarded the ship. God, I paid my own money. I'm boarding this ship here. I'm by myself and just asking to see one whale in this sea. So can you just bring it to me? About 10 minutes after the ship had left the dock, I realized a fundamentally true fact. People don't really go on whale-watching cruises by themselves. This was a fact I was helpfully invited to realize by a family reunion group who asked me, "Are you really here all by yourself?" Feeling alone and excluded, I became more irked with God with each passing minute. As my eyes squinted at a strikingly uninhabited by whales horizon, I expressed my dissatisfaction to God, if only because there was no one else around to express it to. Dear Lord, I hate to be particular, but I only had one thing in mind. I don't care if the air is sweet or the sea is still. I still want a whale. To this day, I have never seen a whale. Our ever-optimistic captain assured us that whales were seen every day and were always just around the corner. But my boat encountered not even one of the majestic beasts that were apparently impossible to miss. Of course, I thought bitterly, how could I have expected anything to go differently? After all, my summer was all about absences. The absence of friends, the absence of family, might as well throw in the absence of whales, too. In the days that followed, I had to do the annoying task of explaining to all my friends and family that I had told about the whale cruise that, no, in fact, I hadn't seen a whale, and yes, it really was a long 4.5 hours, and yes, that's right, I had gone all by myself. Each little conversation reinforced my perception of the excursion, that it was primarily a story of absence. That is, until my mom asked me a simple question. "So, what did you see?" I muttered a response. "Well, I was out there for a while. It was a really calm day on the ocean. I saw a few seals, some other boats. I don't know. At one point we saw like 3,000 dolphins." Her reaction was strangely eager and excited. 3,000 dolphins? Madeline, that's amazing! What was it like?" In this simple reaction, my entire portrayal of my whale-watching cruise as some sort of big tragedy fell flat. I was forced to admit that I actually had seen something beautiful, despite the fact that it wasn't the exact experience of beauty that I had demanded of God. I explained the dolphin sighting to my mom. "Well, the dolphins drew near our boat and swam right alongside us. They kept nudging all sides of the boat as they flipped and dove and played right there with us." Just to make sure she didn't forget the fact that there were no whales, I made sure to close with a begrudging and nonchalant, "I guess it was pretty cool." However, throughout the course of my summer, my mom's reaction to my story stayed with me. She didn't respond to my story how I had expected. She didn't even mention how unfair it was, or affirm that it was a waste of time. After a while, I wondered if maybe I hadn't been telling the story right. Maybe, at the heart of it, I had missed capturing what was actually true. I desperately wanted to see a whale as proof that God was there and God loved me, when surrounding me from all sides were signs of His presence. The beautiful deep ocean, the fact that I was breathing in the clear air, the beauty of being on a ship on the still waters. I barely even noticed thousands of dolphins nudging our boat, eager to play and just be with us. During my summer at that women's shelter, I barely noticed God doing the same thing, nudging me each day, eager to play and just be with me. I barely noticed these things in my determination to tell a story of absence rather than presence. Perhaps, if we open ourselves to looking not for what we want, but for what is given, we just might see something like 3,000 nudging dolphins in our own lives, those potentially unnoticed gifts that are beautiful and abundantly loving, precisely because they are larger than and different from what we would have foolishly sought to demand for ourselves. I was quick to place God and whales on my own personal list of things that were absent. And while it is true that whales may be at times frustratingly absent, God, on the other hand, is always, always present, and looking at us lovingly, even and especially when we are not able to see it. I am learning to pay attention to the abundance of loving nudges that are so often missed by holding out for big, dramatic signs, whether or not they happen to be in the form of dolphins and whales. Instead of watching for whales, I am watching for grace, which, in the words of my ship captain, is seen daily, is just around every corner, and is impossible to miss.